Good morning. Welcome to Juniper Level Botanic Garden. We have a little class this morning on companion planting with bulbs. My focus, it will be on the small winter blooming, early spring blooming bulbs, because many of them can occupy the space that has been vacated by something, a plant that is dormant in the winter. So you're getting twice as much color out of one space by subletting the space. Summer blooming things in the summer of all times, and winter blooming things in the winter. Of course, you know, these span a bunch more seasons than just those two. These little free classes at our open houses are not meant to be comprehensive, but they might be a good starting point. Okay, I think we will start right over here. Well, yeah. Let me grab two plants off the table.
First time here?
No. Yeah, okay.
First time this year. Well, welcome back.
He's ready for St. Patrick's Day.
Always.
Are you Irish?
Yes.
Okay.
We are all together.
Here's a really good example. This stump is of a Baptisia, one of the false indigos, and it's going to be a big herbaceous bush through the summer months. It's going to be in full bloom if you come back for our spring open house. This little bulb is one that I really value for this companion planting. This is the blue star flower. Someone needs to tell me it's not blue. Well, the typical color is blue. You might see it in old neighborhoods where it's naturalized in lawns, and they're predominantly pale blue and white. But this is a pink selection of it. Yeah, it's Charlotte Bishop. And quite a few of these bulbs I'm going to point out today are summer dormant, and they don't wait till this time of year to put up foliage. They put up foliage in the fall, and the foliage is present all winter long. And they're mostly bulbs of Mediterranean origin. So in a Mediterranean climate, it's hot and dry in the summer. So one way to deal with that is just go to sleep for the summer. So they completely disappear in the summer. They come up in the fall when there's a little bit more moisture available, and grow through the winter. These plants have gotten really thick. And I'm going to demonstrate over here on a little iris, but you can dig them up and spread them around, and I love to do that this time of year where I can see where the blank spots are. You know, I grew up in a gardening family, and my mom said you wait till bulbs to go dormant until you transplant them. Well, if you do that, it's spring, you're too busy to do it, and you can't see where the blank spots are, and you divide them while they're still in active growth, and they might grumble after you do that, but they'll come back next spring looking as if you hadn't ever disturbed them at all. So it's partly just getting brave enough to do something like that.
So is that true of most bulbs? That you
Yes.
can divide them while they're blooming?
Yeah, well, I generally don't do it while they're blooming. Because I don't want to lose the bloom. But thank you for the question, because one thing I did mean to say is that often the best time to do something is when you have time. You know, there are an awful lot of rules about the timing of doing something. You know, the first full moon in the second month after spring starts, or something really specific. But basically, plants are forgiving. Most things you can do whenever you have the time. It's true of pruning as well. Yeah, so you could do it now. And yes?
We live in an old neighborhood that have these. And
Yeah.
some people have told us that it's poisonous to have
They're what?
poisonous.
To dogs or animals?
Well, I don't know if I don't know if you heard the question. This gentleman said they live in an older neighborhood where the star flower is naturalized, and some people say they're poisonous.
For pets.
They are in the allium family, so they're the same family as onion and garlic. That doesn't prove that they're not poisonous, because there's plenty of plant families where you have things like deadly nightshade is in the same family as tomatoes and potatoes. So I don't have any knowledge of anyone being poisonous. Now they do have a garlicky smell, and one really nice thing about Ipheion, the blue star flower, is that it generally doesn't get eaten by creatures in the garden, and when you can quickly lose crocus to voles, this one doesn't get eaten. Yeah. Okay. I brought, this is a snowdrop, galanthus. It's, it's SR0. That's a really old variety, but it's still a really good garden plant. The winter and spring blooming snowdrops are another plant you could use in this manner. They're also very good in shade. Ipheion will be presentable in shade, but it really loves to be out in the sun. And though most of the plants I'm going to talk about today are plants that are not native, the term for non-native plants are exotic plants. It just means from someplace other than here. But a number of our spring ephemerals, native wildflowers that come up, bloom, and quickly die away are really good for this purpose. And this is a wonderful native plant. You can see it sometimes in local woodlands. It's one of the cardamines. They're same family as mustard greens and broccoli, and they have this four-petaled flower, just like your mustard greens when they go to seed, and that's typical of the family. And this is Cardamine bulbosa, referring to the fact that it's actually growing from a bulb. This is a great companion plant to use in your shade garden, around like big hostas that are invisible this time of year, or big deciduous ferns. And we have a number of other selections, and the cardamines are close relatives to the dentarias, which are toothwort, very similar plants. All right, let me grab my fork. This is Iris reticulata. The genus Iris is really large. There's, I think, about 500 species. And this is one of the species that grows from a bulb. You can buy the bulbs from the bulb vendors in the fall. Occasionally in the grocery store, you'll see little forced pots of it. If you buy them and plant them, they'll be permanent additions to the garden. I'm pulling this label out to find out when this plant was planted, because all our engraved labels have a year on it. That's the year something was planted. And this was probably planted as a single bulb in 2019 and has multiplied. And now the little Iris reticulata foliage looks a lot like onion grass, but you can, this is what I'm talking about, dividing these bulbs.
I like your polar bear.
Those are all its roots. You could divide them into little clumps or even smaller, or if you only want like 3 clumps, you can you can divide it into small clumps like that. That's the bulb it's growing from. The bulb will get bigger as they pack away, as the foliage packs away more food in it. No, it's a bulb. It's bulb in the common sense. If you must be technical, it's a corm, not a bulb, but bulb works for me. I don't need that modern term geophyte. Don't get me started on geophytes. I hate the term. But see, divide them into smaller clumps. And if you grow the Iris reticulata and you're not sure whether you're looking at onion grass or the iris, I'm going to pass this around and feel that the leaves are triangular. Thank you. And I'm going to come back later on and plant this more properly, but for the purpose of this demonstration, you just spread it around and make a bigger mass out of it. So you could, if your plant budget isn't huge, you could buy just 5 of these bulbs, and if not that many years from now, you'll be able to divide it like I'm dividing this one. And my personal plant budget at home is not huge, so I'll buy a few of one thing and a few of another, and I'd rather spend $10 on one thing and $10 on another rather than my whole budget on 100 of something. And I'm going to be a good person and come back and water this after this little class is over. So, I hope that gives you the courage to divide your bulbs that have gotten too crowded. Some bulbs, when they get real crowded, won't bloom as much. So if you have old daffodils, especially the larger flowered ones, and they're in plenty of sun and they're not blooming well any longer, they probably need to be divided. They'll take a couple years to build up strength to start blooming again, but it's pretty much guaranteed that they will once again resume blooming. This is a pretty blue selection named Caroline. The Iris reticulata can be also shades of red, violet, and white, and some bicolored ones.
You've got some iris there that's in the midst of the phlox.
Yes.
The phlox causing it any problems from a growing standpoint?
No, this is what he's seeing, this foliage back here. It's more of this one. They seem to be growing well, but the flowers are sort of obscured, being blended in with the phlox. And maybe if they were a different color, like that down towards the end, there's a real pretty one. It might be done blooming already. That is Iris reticulata that's mostly white. That would stand out in the phlox. Yeah, but I'm probably going to transplant that. Yeah. We'll take a little trip to see a couple more examples. There are a lot of small daffodils. I love the bigger daffodils too, but I don't like their huge volumes of foliage. And I trust everyone in this crowd is knowledgeable enough to know that you have to leave that foliage as long as it's green, because it's packing food away in the bulbs. If you remove the foliage, they're probably not going to bloom next year. If you remove the foliage every year, they'll probably eventually not be in the garden anymore. And you can't tie them up like my mom had us do it when we were kids. So you just have to put up with it. But these smaller daffodils, the foliage is very fine. It sort of disappears without even noticing it's going. Now, this is one of the Hoop-petticoat daffodils. You can see it gets that name from the shape of the flower. It's no longer, well, it's going past its peak of bloom, so that's why it doesn't look perfect. You should have seen it last week. And some of these small Narcissus daffodils put up foliage in the fall, and a lot of gardeners growing such things for the first time think, oh my God, why it's going to die when the weather gets cold. No, that's their natural growth habit. They come through the coldest winter without any damage. This is, it is straight Narcissus jonquilla. The jonquils, and they often go by the common name of jonquil, are very fragrant. Pass it around, please. they just get better every year after year. Oh, and they're called jonquils because jonquilla, it means little juncus, and juncus is the common rush, that really common wetland plant that has these narrow cylindrical leaves. Grape hyacinths, there are many selections of them, and they put their foliage up in the fall, the common ones do. And then, oh, there's actually two different types here. This one's not fully open, but that becomes like a big wad of double flowers. They are called grape hyacinths because it looks like a cluster of grapes. Yeah, it's a little bit fragrant. I haven't been lucky with all of the grape hyacinths, but many of them just are persistent in the garden, so they get better every year. And all of these can be divided when they get crowded or when you're ready to spread them around your garden. I'm going to take us a few steps back and go to the other side. This is another daffodil, another Narcissus in the Jonquil group. It's Narcissus willkommii, but it's basically just another jonquil that is a lovely little early blooming daffodil with a very modest amount of foliage. And I think one last plant, this is very different, looking very much like a little yellow crocus. It's actually just like the blue starflower that we started off with. This is in the allium family, and it's Nothoscordum. Notho means false, scordon is garlic, so this one doesn't look at all like garlic, but some other members in that genus are much bigger plants that look more like a garlic plant. But being in that family, we never lose it to voles or anything like that. It's very fragrant. Often there's a couple places in the garden where we have big masses of it, and you often can smell the fragrance on the air. But it blooms for probably about 6 weeks or so, and then goes dormant in the summer. That's almost as tall as the foliage gets. But it's a lovely little bright thing. This is, as you would imagine, a dry spot. It's meant to be a dry spot. And basically, oh, I can't say it doesn't get irrigation because I'm right in front of one of the irrigation heads. But it's extremely well drained, but we also grow it in wet spots, so it's very adaptable. So Nothoscordum sellowianus, a sellowianum, I think, commemorating somebody named Sello. Well, any questions on this topic? These are some of my favorite plants this time of year, and it's fun to work them into a garden where they don't have to go in the blank spots, but I love being able to have twice as much color in the garden from one spot. Well, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay.